You going to join us?
The workshop topic that we will proceed upon is facilities 5-year plan.
I need one minute.
Superintendent Pace.
Wait, before we get started, you're indulging for a minute.
Let me take a moment back and please introduce here my fellow board member, Jay Wheeler.
Thank you.
He wants a minute of your time, please.
Because of, this is for the board, because of what's, the influx of students we've gotten from Hurricane Maria, from Puerto Rico, what are we at, about 1,100 now?
We enrolled based on a recent, this isn't the official count, but as I was walking out of the office, Debbie thinks we enrolled 79 today.
So what's the total?
72 yesterday.
So that total
That
is,
would bring us up to 1,248 students.
okay, the point I want to make with the board specifically as it relates to this, and Mr. Weiser, I know you're paying attention up there. The issue specifically is, this is more than one entire elementary school, and we've got, our staff is doing a yeoman's job. No one's doing anything wrong, everybody's doing, but we didn't anticipate this. And the point I want to make is, I think that we need to allow Dr. Pace an opportunity to possibly bring a position to the board, a hurricane principal, hurricane administrator, disaster administrator, because it just, we've got people doing jobs and now they got to do this also, and it's just, I think it's an undoable job right now with what we've got, which is not to say we're not doing a good job, but this demands at least, Dr. Pace the opportunity to bring us a position, or maybe more, it's up to you, to handle, to make sure these students are successful. And so that way the other administrators we have aren't burdened on top of everything else they've got to do. So Dr. Pace and I talked about this yesterday. So it's not, so she knows about this, we had this conversation. And I would hope that the board, I've got confidence in Dr. Pace, but this is something that we just need to see what you need to support these efforts for these kids. We want them to be successful. I'm on board with it. Please let us know what you need. I can't speak for the other board members, but I wanted to bring it up to the board. I think we really need to listen to what Dr. Pace may need and give her the flexibility on top of the org chart she's already presented to us, on top of, and this has nothing, and this is not a knock on anything, no one's done anything wrong. This kind of just happened to us. So I wanted to share that. I don't know if anybody else has any comments about this, but I think this is something we need to take seriously and let Dr. Pace deal with.
I appreciate that consideration, Mr. Wheeler. I have asked for a spot on the agenda next week to provide some information specifically to the board and our community about where we are. And I would potentially like the board's consideration for at that time to bring you a little bit more information about what we think the needs may be. We have been adding instructional staff and paraprofessionals within my authority to do based on what we've needed in terms of actual enrollment and those types of things. I sent you information today because I do believe we also need some additional support in transportation, just like we added the social workers and an LPN and student services. But it is getting to a point that it is like 2 elementary schools is basically what we've enrolled at this point. Last week we saw the daily enrollment decrease a little bit so that it was averaging around 50 students. We had like 81 day, 31 day, around 50. But as of today, yesterday we enrolled 72. Today we're looking at 79, and that number typically goes up at the end of the day as some data entry clerks catch up with what they're entering. So we've really seen a significant uptick in these last 2 days. And as of this morning, we identified that 88% of the students that we enrolled so far with this particular storm are English language learners. Again, we are used to a diverse group. We are used to providing for their educational needs, but this is a big lift. We're asking a lot right now of our teachers and our principals. Our executive director for multicultural did a great job this morning providing a presentation to our principals at our admin meeting about the support that she's offering within her department. We've already done the additional resource teacher there to support specifically expansion in sheltered instruction, but this is just continuing to grow at a pace that exceeds even what I anticipated last week. So I will ask the board's privilege in bringing you some additional information and potentially a request. Not if we don't need it, but if I think we do, I'll bring it to you at next Tuesday's board meeting.
And board, this is not an effort to grow government. This is an effort to perform at the level we need to perform at with and meet the needs we need to meet. And this is just, we expect growth. Growth is it's just a fact of life here in Osceola County, but this kind of growth this quickly is unprecedented.
But I too am concerned about the impact on the 62,000 that are already here, where everybody is distracted.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Wood. And I think if giving Dr. Pace the latitude to bring some recommendations may help us all on that level. So thank you for the indulgence, Mr. Chairman and Board, and now please go address the meeting.
Okay, this is our opportunity to respond to the board's request for additional information about our 5-year work plan. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Sarah, Mark, Rhonda, and Jason, because they're truly the content experts here. I'm certainly here to provide additional questions. As you know, we basically have 3 components that are moving along hand in hand throughout the year, guiding our capital expenditures. Number 1 is the board-approved budget, which outlines our capital work plan. This work plan is reflected in that and takes it out even further to an additional 5 years, looking at a 10-year look ahead to the best of our projections. And then, of course, we have the educational plant survey, which we all have experienced some frustration with, because there we're having to balance to what the state has indicated as our COFD numbers compared to what we actually anticipate will be our district enrollment. So that's presenting some additional challenges, and Mr. Kreppenbacher will also take a few minutes at the end of this presentation, if we have time, to kind of share where we are right now with the Department of Education, as those 3 things don't always necessarily align with what we anticipate are our needs, or even what the board has already approved to expend with our local dollars. So turning it over to Sarah, Mark, Jason, and Rhonda.
Thank you, Dr. Pace. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is the 5-year work plan that was approved by the board on October 3rd in order to meet our DOE deadline. We were asked to come back in the form of a workshop to provide some more information. So we'll start with Mr. Jason Lindsay providing some background on the work plan.
Good afternoon, board. Real quickly, as we said,
Do you have this printed out so I can have a copy?
You can have mine. You gave me the middle school one. I assumed they already had these copies. This is for the redistricting hearing?
Oh, he wants the actual work plan? He can have mine.
no, he has a work plan.
Oh,
But
can have mine.
we always
Here's
give
the
him a
PowerPoint.
copy of the presentation. That's
I
what.
can't, so if I can't turn back and look, I'm sorry, I can't follow the
No, no
presentation.
problem.
Do you want to take a minute and go print some for all of us?
If you'll
I will
give me
have
that one
somebody
back.
do that.
You got it, Evan? Sorry.
No, we need to provide this for you.
And
That's
on
our,
page-
our,
And while we're
I'll
waiting,
communicate
I've got a
today.
question on page 7 of 24 of this work plan. Project schedules, where it says Toho High School, location not specified. How does that happen?
When it's originally entered.
Once originally entered, it just,
So these don't get updated.
well,
It won't let you
it'll all
typically.
carry through once you've entered it once.
Did you can see that, is it the west side?
'Cause I even know
It
it's
still says, like,
3675 Boggy
middle
Creek
school
Road.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's definitely got an address.
Okay.
I would encourage you to proofread these in the future. We could proceed.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm not waiting.
Well, that's okay. We'll-
Okay.
Okay, just quickly, we'll get you the presentation shortly. As we said, the work plan is due
We're almost done.
to be submitted to DOE on October 1st. Typically, it opens on July 1st of every year. Most recently, it's been kind of pushed back, doesn't open exactly on July 1st due to some financial things that has to be worked out at DOE, so it works out, and it opens up a little bit later. The work plan constitutes a 5-year listing of capital outlay projects adopted by the district school board in reference to Florida statutes 101335. Annually, prior to adoption, as we said, prior to the adoption of the district's budget, each district school board shall prepare a tentative educational plan, which is what we're looking at today, that includes long-range planning facilities over 5, 10, and 20-year needs. The plan must be developed in coordination with the local government's comprehensive plan, which we take to our quarterly TWIG meetings, which is the technical working group, and it includes the 2 municipalities and a member from Osceola County. They go over the work plan, they take the work plan back to their offices and review it. The school board's plan for provision of new schools must meet all needs of the growing communities, both urban and rural communities. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn over to Ms. Graber to go over the financial sections, pages 2 through 7.
So as Dr. Price mentioned before, this is not really the starting point. The starting point is the meetings that we do to prepare our original capital plan. So we meet throughout the year. We talk about our capital needs, our 5-year needs, 10-year needs, 20-year needs. That's really the initiation of where we're developing what our capital plan is going to be. The first couple pages of this document, all this information is coming directly from the 5-year capital plan that's in the board-approved budget. So all of this data, that's where that's coming from. It's just in a slightly different format.
Is this specifically for Tallahassee's purposes?
Yes. One thing I do want to point out on the first page, you'll see in the middle right here, the summary. If you read this clearly, it says summary of revenue and expenditures available for new construction and remodeling projects only. So this is not all of our capital revenues and all of our capital expenditures. It looks a little funny, especially if you look out in year 5, you'll see zeros there. I know that question had come up. What these numbers here represent is just the new school projects and the comprehensive renovation projects. So,
You're on page 2 right now, correct?
page 1.
Page 1 right here.
Those totals.
Right, okay, right.
Yeah. So those dollar amounts there, what those represent are in our 5-year capital plan, all new school projects. So Topeka High, Celebration Island Village Elementary, Old Hickory Elementary, Harmony Area Middle, and the STEM Demonstration High School, along with our comprehensive renovation projects for Michigan Avenue, Denjon, St. Cloud, and then 2 other small remodeling projects. So that's what those dollar figures include. Then the next couple of pages walk through everything else that's included in our capital plan for all the expenditures. So our regular capital expenditures, like the technology, our debt service payments, safety and security, portables, everything else that's not actually new school construction or campus reconstruction. That includes all of the other expenditures.
I'd like to stop on page 3.
Okay.
On page 3 at the top, maintenance and repair. I mean, I know how this was organized, and I know that for purposes for Tallahassee, this is considered acceptable. I get that. And I'm not suggesting you send something different to Tallahassee. But what I would like to see, and I can't speak for the whole board, is you've got maintenance and repair. You got 8.3 million, 10 million, 10 million, 10 million for a total of 48. And then down here, your subtotals. $8 to $10 million, that's a lot of money. I'd like to know on an annualized basis. I mean, I know you've listed every facility on it. I know how this was organized, but if I'm spending $8 million in a year, $10 million in a year, I want to know what I'm spending $10 million on. It's a lot of money. You know, where isn't? I mean, in the 5-year plan, for instance, you list all these. You might have projects 1 through 10, year 1, year 11 through 20, year 2, et cetera. And again, I'm not suggesting you send this any differently to Tallahassee. But for my purposes, and I can't speak for the entire board, when I see numbers like $8.5 to $10 million, I'd like to see some itemization.
So to respond to that, these dollar amounts that's basically our $4 million that we allocate each year for the cyclical capital renewal project, along with $6 million that we're allocating of sales tax dollars to address deferred maintenance now. So each year, we're establishing what those projects are. And so in year 1, the breakdown of all those projects was included in the board-approved budget. And we'll go through that on an annual basis, determining which projects are going to be allocated those dollars.
I guess I'd like, okay.
So we have that detail for year 1.
Okay.
And then in the spring, we'll be determining that detail for the
You
following
got
year.
year 1 handy?
Mhm.
If I could take a look at it, that'd be great. That would help. Thank you. And I wasn't trying to give you a hard time, I'm just looking at it.
Absolutely. So, for example, that page is the $6 million of sales tax dollars, and prior to that is the other $4 million piece.
So when we talk about things like HVAC or roof repair or carpet replacement, awnings, all of those things are approved within your original budget, based on recommendations of committees that meet, principal input, requests for safety and security needs, health safety items that must be repaired, those types of things that are prioritized based on the critical level of the need. And for a long time, you only had the $4 million in cyclical maintenance, so a lot of these things kind of stacked up, in terms of what needed to be done. So when we talk about our sales tax projects, those are all a part of this detail.
Is there anything we need to do based on the tax code change of probably no longer having tax-free debt? I don't even know if you could do anything between now and the end of the year or not, but is there anything PFM is recommending or anything?
No, at this point,
Or any refundings that we've got?
the
that we
only
can still do?
implication, and I think I forwarded you all PFM's email, the only implication would be if we had any upcoming advanced refundings, we would need to get them done prior to December 31st, 2017. But we've already refunded everything that we can at this point, so we don't have any pending refundings, and specifically on any advanced
Is there any
refunding.
new debt that we were looking at in a year or two that we might, I don't know, I'm just asking.
Not currently, and I don't believe any new debt would be impacted at this point from the tax changes. Okay, so that's all the expenditures listed out, and then the same thing with revenue. This just goes through all of our revenue sources, exactly the same information that's included in the 5-year capital plan in the budget. What's different about this particular format is it kind of backs you into some different totals, but ultimately what it's really trying to get back to is how much revenue is coming in minus all of our regular everyday capital expenditures, and how much is left over that we're allocating to new schools and new renovation projects. And that's kind of the financial part that's coming from the budget. That gets you through page 7. And then Jason and his team kind of take over and fill in the rest of the information. So I'll turn it back over to him to walk you through the rest of the plan, unless anybody has any questions about the financial piece.
Okay, next on page 7 at the bottom, you'll see the capacity project schedules. And what this is it reflects exactly what Sarah was talking about. All the approved funded capital projects that include student capacity. And in there you'll see Tohoku High School, New Elementary School A, Middle School AA, New Elementary School C, and the STEM Choice High School. And those are just the funded projects in the budget that are going to be carrying capacity. The next is the other project schedules. And what this is every year, the maintenance department does a facilities condition assessment. And what they do is they send out a team, they go around and they assess each facility. Do they need flooring? Do they need painting? Do they need whatever it may be? And they come back, they put together a report, they hand it to us, and we report what they're going to be needed. Now, this is unfunded, currently unfunded. And they take in consideration the comprehensive renovation plans. They back those out, so those aren't reflected in here.
So if they're doing an annual assessment of a facility and what they need, don't they go back to that assessment and say, okay, we can get 1 or 2 more years out of this floor, this chiller, these windows,
They
that way
do.
next year.
They do, they'll push
Then
it.
you're not reinventing the wheel every year necessarily.
Not necessarily, those just check,
Okay.
see what's been done.
Jason, how, to that point, how accurately is the genuine need of the facility really reflected in the request as opposed to, so does this represent like our real deal if our facilities were going to be exactly the way we need them to be? And I'll use an example. I drove by Pleasant Hill Elementary the day, and the roof, of course, as we know, is an ongoing issue of keeping it clean. And it's slated for cleaning again in this upcoming summer, I think it is, or something like that. Those items are reflected, like, hey, we know we need to get this roof clean, we know we need to resurface this, but it's not softened in any way, correct?
No,
Okay.
it's what we need.
And I ask because I think you know that, number one, this board has always said we want to have the true picture of what we're dealing with, and it also helps us with the narrative of what we're trying to communicate to other stakeholders in the community, that we do have some real maintenance needs. And yes, we're going to stretch everything out as far as we can to maximize a dollar, but we need, my opinion is, we need to know the reality of what it's going to take so that when that parent calls me to complain about a broken marquee or a dirty roof or whatever it might be, that we understand the reality of the circumstance. So
Right.
this reflects that reality.
Yes, and that's their whole point.
Thank you.
Okay, and every single facility is listed, And it's pretty, the first column there is kind of a project description, and it's a, I won't say a generic project description. It doesn't say this many square foot of roof. It'll say roofing, carpeting, painting. That's what they put on their assessment that needs done in the next 5 years. Okay. Any questions on that part? All right. Under the additional project schedules on page 12, that's where you'll find our comprehensive renovation projects. They're on here because in the budget, I believe they're under non-capacity, so we had to report them in this section. Now, some of the schools will be adding capacity, some might be taking some away, but we have to report them here as other projects.
Which page was that?
Page 12.
Well,
And the non-funded growth management projects are projects that we see that we are going to need. They're in our 5-year radar, thank you, but they're not funded. We know we need them, the money's just not there, or we will need them based on our 5, 10, 20-year projections, 5, 10-year projections. I can't say 20, we're not that good. Well, she is, I'm not. So these are what we see we'll need based off our projections, based on new development and everything that's coming in around the district.
So, can I, where is elementary school D?
That is like north central Kissimmee, so somewhere between Flora Ridge and West Side.
And this AAA high school, thank you, it's not triple F, or
No.
4Fs.
Yes, thank God.
That's,
Quadruple F high school.
That's-
This would be like the
Tahoma.
Neptune
yeah. Tahoma.
Into
area,
Tahoma.
possibly.
Yes.
Yes, and the only other thing that could change that would be however the moratorium plays out on how they're gonna treat the west side of the county. Because right now, Tahoma and a high school for that side of town, they're really running neck to neck. So depending on how the moratorium's gonna change the land use, it could change what's being developed in each
So
section.
we need a new high school on west side as much as we need one on east side.
Right now, they're
basically.
running neck and neck, yes, sir. Yep, if you think about Celebration, OHS, and
Sure,
Point Santa
sure.
High,
Absolutely.
that's where the relief is needed.
We also need more turf fields.
Let's just get a school that just has a field.
Right. Next, it starts on page 12, runs to page 13. This is our capacity tracking. This is everybody's favorite topic. It's based on COFD. This is our COFD projections as of this year's COFD allocation. So it's updated every year, as everyone knows. This is this year's look at the numbers that we have broken down through 5 years. And if you look at the third column from the right, if I'm speaking correctly.
While you're searching, could I just ask something that popped into my mind? Dr. Pace, are there opportunities for more of these magnet-type high schools to identify, to relieve some of the, like we're doing at Neo City, building the high school, it's not $75 million, right?
No.
To kind of relieve, like say we were to put something in Point Siena that would take 300 kids, 400 kids away, is there some discussion about that?
We haven't had any additional discussion about other magnets, but it's certainly something that I think we should definitely explore. Right now, we've been pretty aggressive in launching the Neo City and Tahoma
Yep.
at the same time, Topa at the same time. There's also some discussion of charter schools. Mater is looking at a 9-12 school,
Okay.
as well as then potentially Tahoma has talked about doing a charter school of their own that would cover that kind of thing. So it's always a balance as well between looking at what capacity our charters will be able to support and then what we want to do as a district. But certainly we've had success with OXA and PATHS, and I am confident that our
Well,
school at Neo
that's-
City will be the same thing, and it may make more sense to do
Oxa West or
smaller.
an Oxa East or something of that, for, what's the Neo City High School gonna cost?
15 million total
So
project.
take 15 million instead of 75, pull out the kids that aren't really into athletics and whatnot.
Right.
Then you've got a high school.
I just met with a guy from Apple in California and tried to get to come to work over here. and he wanted to talk about schools, so I got him to talk to schools. Very excited about that. He's going home for his white coat.
Let me piggyback on that. You know that a number of years ago, one of the things I wanted to see happen was a standalone school as a business school, school for entrepreneurship, whatever we want to call it. And that became the genesis of the incubation at St. Cloud High School for what was going to be the Junior Achievement Program, but due to cost became just our own business academy within the school. The original intent of that, when Melba and I talked about it, was that it would be incubated in a school with the idea of one day being able to be a standalone product that we would grow out of Osceola County, the next 500 small business owners and leaders. I don't know the cost analysis of, does an OXA cost us more on a per student station basis or on an operational basis as opposed to a full comprehensive high school or with demonstration or does PAS. But I do believe philosophically that it's a very smart approach for us to take, even if it costs us a little bit more, and that's what the net result is. Because when you create that hook for students that they're going to a school to do the things that they genuinely want to do as opposed to just going because they have to be in school, I think it ends up driving the results that we want, and it does create that unique identifier that we're looking for. And so I think of the day that we can communicate with someone at Apple and say, you can come here, we have a plethora of comprehensive high school options for you, but we also have a science school, an engineering school, a business school, an arts school, whatever those complements might be. And they go, that's great, because Johnny has always said he wanted to be the next Michael Dell, although the Apple guy wouldn't be saying that way. But whatever the case might be. So I'd love to see us explore that and figure out when, if at all, there's that opportunity for us to take. And I think about, I don't care geographically where, but like the business academy, like right in downtown St. Cloud or right in downtown Kissimmee or something like that, to where there's a natural business hub that surrounds it as well, and those partners can support
Yeah,
a
you
program
get those
like that.
people participating in
Right.
experiences for the kids.
Yeah.
I will tell you that from an accountability
Or
standpoint.
downtown Poinciana, is if there is such a thing.
You and I have had some discussion, regarding the aviation charter school, and from an accountability standpoint, it often sometimes makes sense with our current rules to build those kinds of programs as an academy within a school, so that you have the entire arm of the school as that develops. The school that we're building at Neo City is going to be different. We're designing it very differently from the very beginning so that it can be successful from day one, but you have to be very, very careful in doing that with a small population to start.
Sure.
That's too why we're doing the JA Academy at OHS and starting the CFC Bank program to build on the finance entrepreneurial experience that we've got at St. Cloud High as academies within a school. So there's a balance there, but certainly in all of those arenas, we're looking to explore those partnerships within the community. There's also always the idea of SREF guidelines and those kinds of requirements that we're having to be very creative with in our temporary space for the demonstration school, but that you just kind of have to work your way through. So in addition to we want to really be able to offer this cool business, cool finance, cool engineering program for kids to choose from, you have to look at all of those components to make sure what makes sense from finance, accountability, facilities, and community support. But yeah, definitely worth exploring.
Is it easier?
There is an economy of scale
Yeah.
with a
I
larger high
understand
school.
that. But is there any, what about the possibility of annexes, so to speak, just to get building space?
Yep, that's
And
definitely.
That's kind of where you were going, that's kind of where my.
Right. We originally, even with the school at Neo City, talked about should that be an annex of Gateway or an annex of Paths. But to have the partnership that we have with Bridge, with UCF, with the county, it made more sense
Sure.
to make it a standalone. But again, we're designing the curriculum and the programming of that and the student recruitment piece very
So
strategically.
if there was, say, space available somewhere in downtown St. Cloud for the St. Cloud Business Academy, where we could take a couple hundred kids
Yep,
and they could be there all day to free up some space over at the, that's kind of what I was,
yep.
and that is
Definitely.
a possibility.
I got a question, Dr. Pace. The STEM high school, is it going to be a magnet school?
Yes.
So we'll provide transportation to any qualified student from anywhere?
Hub transportation, just like we do for OXA and Paths. It will be the only addition to our transportation routes.
Okay, I've got another question. Ricky, you made me think of this right now about what you said with St. Cloud just now. What about, can we resuscitate a program that was very successful, Project Future at Epcot, where we had students in the morning would go to classes, then in the afternoon work in the parks and vice versa. Some students work in the parks in the morning, and in the afternoon come to school here, under the premise that they wanted to do something different than what you do on a 2,000 student campus, et cetera. And I don't know if that's the right model, but that one did exist and it was successful.
It did. We tried to build on that kind of a model, but within our own district with our dual enrollment to TICO options, so that students perhaps who were with that dropout recovery type program, but looking for also a career field, career experience, could take their academic classes during the day at the high school, perhaps in the Plato lab doing credit recovery, half a day, and then half a day at TICO. Transportation's been a big challenge for us. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is doing some minivan transportation that doesn't require CDL to drive, but I think that we can use for multiple purposes to help make those kinds of things possible.
Well, and the other point, just to build on that, is Mr. Krieger over at Gaylord, he is very interested in some sort of kind of a relationship like that to build his own workforce with careers and from culinary to everything else he's got over there. And that's right here in Osceola County. I mean, that's.
Well, the other thing that we're trying to do is, as I've talked to you about, is to develop internship opportunities with Melanie and her group in our CTE department. And that's where those types of opportunities could be really valuable, both for our high school students in those fields, but also for our TICO adult students, particularly because we're working to build the hospitality program at the Point Siena site in TICO.
I mean, the same thing will happen with high school kids, just like you mentioned, is transportation will be, could easily be an issue with that. Okay, I'm sorry.
So we're also talking about link passes.
Thank you.
So I would just conclude this comment. I'd like to see us be very intentional about exploring these options, much like we do at the demonstration high school. There was a sense of urgency to it. And I'm not saying by any stretch that we abandon the whole, that we stay committed to our process, we understand what it is that we're dealing with. But I'll just tell you, I mean, I genuinely believe in the importance of these standalone opportunities that genuinely attract students and families and businesses for that matter. And I wouldn't want us to just kind of go, well, it's a good idea and we'll get back to it. And then 5 years later we go, well, it's a good idea and we get back to it. I'd like there to be a sense of urgency in looking at something like that, and when is the right point in time, and are we intentional about building out a strategy to say, you know what, we think in a year, 2 or 3, we could create something like this. I don't want to wait 3 years to begin the conversation about when we could launch something like that. And although for me, the business academy was something very personal, I think is extremely important for our community. It doesn't have to be that. If it's something else, when the demonstration high school came up, there was no hesitation for me on it. And it wasn't like my initial response was, well, no, we've been talking about doing the business one for a number of years, let's put that on hold. There was a need, there was an opportunity, and we all agreed to capitalize on it. I'd like us to be that intentional about looking at these other opportunities.
And I think our community will drive that conversation. What are the needs that are driving our community that say, this is what we want?
Good, all right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on.
Fine.
That's the right question.
Back to the tracking section, like I said, this is a breakdown of this year's released copy for 5 years. And we take this information, we break it down by school, by year, and we have to balance every year. If you look at the last page.
Can I ask a quick question? Is the money that we're losing for charter school capital factored into our things that become non-funded? Or are these done before we knew that we had a reduction coming?
No, that reduction is part of our budget right now.
Okay.
So that is accounted for in our costs, so to speak.
Okay, sorry, I saw the charter school, didn't think of that.
So at the bottom of page 14, you'll see that the projected 5-year COFD is a total of 54,541 students. And we have to balance to that number.
And that is the challenge that we have all discussed, and that we don't believe that is a true realistic picture of our needs.
Right. Yeah, and just keep in mind that that COFD number does not include the students that are enrolled in charter schools, that are in McKay, programs like that. Just keep that in mind when you're looking at that number. Next is our charter school tracking. This is every charter school that's open as of this year, based on their projected student stations for this year. Now, some may grow year by year to their total build out, but this is the look as of right now at all the charter schools in the district. On page 16 is our special use tracking. It says Ross Jeffries. Ross Jeffries holds our VPK program. That's why it's listed in this area. It's our parent. That's what I'm looking for. Our parent hub.
Parent Information Center.
Thank you. Sorry, went blank. And then the next section is our total co-teaching classrooms. This is reported from the schools of how many classrooms are actually co-teach. Most of these are in elementary school. As of right now.
Interject just a quick question. Has there been any discussion, any recent discussion or any desire for us to do a Bella Lago type scenario, not just EFBD, but private capital being able to provide student stations for us?
Yes.
And us operating a charter school, much like we do with Bella Lago, to offset some of our capital needs? Yeah, but have we had any conversations? Have there been any flavor for that? A P3 as an example?
We haven't explored it since I've been the superintendent, but it's certainly not anything that we're opposed to. You know, as we were starting to think about the demonstration school, we talked about what makes the most sense. Would a charter make more sense? We explored the lab school concept initially, and then we felt like within our capital budget, we could make it work currently without pushing anything else off too far, and we felt like it was that meaningful when the county was willing to give us the land. But certainly as we move forward and continue to face challenges, I think we're going to have to continue to explore those kinds of options.
Yeah, and I wonder so I remember, I think Rhonda, you may have been part of some of the conversations with Clyde and I a number of years ago. We were trying to figure out a way to leverage some additional EFBD components, like with Tahopwa and Kindred and some of these other projects. And I think we even had another conversation with another developer, and we were trying to say, if you'll self-impose these EFBD fees on your individual sites to help us build capacity sooner as opposed to later. And some of the mechanisms just didn't come together. But I do believe there's opportunity if we wanted to. So first of all, the question would be, does the Bella Lago model work? I think it does. And would we want to look at, if a developer isn't willing to self-impose the EFBD component onto their real estate, is there still not an opportunity for private dollars to come in, build the student stations for us lease them back and operate it as a charter but run by the district? Could that not shorten and bridge some of the gaps that we have with funding capacity as well as student stations? And we could probably do it a heck of a lot quicker that way too.
And Clarence and I had that discussion in a couple of different meetings with the Tahopwa Development Group in terms of if they wanted to put the capital dollars in it as a district, we would be happy to operate it for them. They seem to still want to go the charter route, but I think Tavistock has also expressed an interest in talking with us further about opportunities to expedite capital development of their communities, including the schools component, while allowing us to do some really unique things with it. And that's where I think some of the things that you guys have talked about in terms of these smaller specific magnets would really have a place, because that's what they're looking for as well. It has to be the right development and the right partner to make that come together and happen. But we're certainly engaging in those conversations. Just don't have anything structured right now in the next six to 12 months.
I would also say, though, that it doesn't have to be tied to a development. There's opportunity for just a P3 in and of itself, regardless of whether, so you think about some of the infill or some of the west side of town or some of those things where we say we have a need, maybe we can bring some private dollars to the table to help develop the facility and still have it be run as a district school. So I think certainly when we can have, you know, a Seacrest or one of these guys that are willing to work with us, that's a great opportunity, and I think it's the way, by the way, for all of us at the table, I think it's the way we should be looking at engaging the development community, is if you want to come here and you want to build, that's great, let's be at the table, let's figure out before day one even begins, how do we figure out how to be true partners in this? everybody wins.
But
And
was some of the stuff coming on the new tax code that's gonna probably eliminate tax-free bonding? That advantage that we currently have for that is gonna be negated.
Tim, when you hear what I talk about later, those concepts are concepts we really need to flush out and try and pursue.
Right.
Not to throw the fly in the ointment, but the reason Bella Lago worked.
Well, don't then.
The reason Bella Lago worked is because Avatar, they're the ones on the hook for the financial performance, so it doesn't go against our capital budget. I mean, if it's a capital lease, it's a capital lease. If you get a P3 where somebody is contracting with us to run it, it's their dollars, they're the ones on the hook for the annual assessments, et cetera. Then, to your point, Tim, that's a beautiful thing. That works. That's why the EFBD was how they decided to fund it, but it was their school one way or the other. I mean, whether they used that mechanism or another, it was never on our books as our asset and our liability. As long as we don't, to your point, people have approached me with a million different financial schemes since I've been elected. But, if it's a capital lease, it's a capital lease. And the key is to get it where it doesn't impact our capital funding and bonding ability. Then we can do this all day long. And that's why, to your point, Bella Lago works so well. It's a great model, but if we can get someone else to embrace that model or something similar where it doesn't impact our capital budget and is not a capital lease, then I don't believe anybody in this district or on this board would have an objection to looking at that.
Well, and I imagine that this is the tone, but I would say this is what I would want the tone, and this directly to your team, Mark, is that when we have a unique opportunity to determine what the relationships are going to look like when people come to Osceola County and they say we want to build. It can either be adversarial or it could be collaborative. And if we know that when development is happening, it causes concern for us because we have to figure out how we're going to build these student stations fast enough to deal with the growth that's going to follow all of this. But I think if we set the right tone early on, which comes from your department primarily, of course, to your office superintendent, that we are open and receptive to people coming, provided that we create these true partnerships. We're trying to figure out how do we create a win-win. Developers, first of all, they only want to build where they can sell homes. They can only sell homes where people want to go to good schools. And that is a simple fact of it. And if we can figure out from the onset how to communicate the right message from us as a school district to everybody, that we're here and we're open and we're not adversarial to you coming, and when you come, we want to be creative. Admittedly, they're going to come to the table with what's going to be in their best interest, as they should. We need to come to the table with what's in our best interest, and then we need to figure out where, if at all, there's a compromise and a melding of those two things to create the greatest outcome for us. So my point, and the reason I directed at you, is I think it's important, and I suspect you're already doing this, but that your department is sending that type of message to people when they come in to say, we're not ones that are saying, we don't want you here. We're saying, and by the way, we benefit greatly from all the rooftops that get developed. We're talking about impact fees and the dollars that we need with that and the potential impact of a moratorium on that downstream. It really is a symbiotic relationship, and I want us to start that narrative the right way. I suspect you are, but that's just my personal opinion. Otherwise, if things rub wrong, then we're trying to go back and we're trying to squeeze that round peg in a square hole, and like it or not, we're all business, but humans are still human, right? Egos still get wounded. There's still emotions tied in some of these things, and if you anger the wrong person and you try to go back later and try to repair it to build a partnership, they might go, no, you had that opportunity and you snubbed me when I came in the first time, so I don't have any interest in talking with you. So again, I assume you're doing it, but I don't know if I'm the only one here that feels that way or not, but I think that's the way that we should be going about business in the school district.
I'm with you 1,000%, and we've had some of those situations where
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah, Tim, Mark and I worked on a number of deals like this in Orange County. For example, at Avalon, we got one or two schools completely built by the private entity.
Be a college.
Well, no, but the reality was we had to break through the bureaucracy of saying we need to do things differently. So I will tell you, it's very important the board send the message there so that the public knows the tone is out there. right? Because we ran into the complete opposite of where we were trying to drive it, and we were getting pushback.
Right.
And so setting that stage the way you just did and Clarence just did is very important for the climate of knowing we're open to every conceivable, because you just don't ever say no to what anybody proposes. If you massage it, it may work.
Right. And let me just turn, am I, Clarence, I know you affirmed the spirit of what I was saying. Board, are we all on the same page with this?
Sure. Again, I don't want it to impact our capital budget or our bonding ability, but if there's a P3 or some other model, we have to be creative. I'm fully agreeing with that, but I've seen too many models that it's a capital lease.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this, so it's the tone, the approach, and what we represent as ourselves, and then the mechanics and the nuances of any one proposal or deal, we're gonna have to vet, and finance and facilities and superintendent will work through, but I think it's an important tone that we all agree on, that we set, and we give the right direction to the superintendent and the staff that this is how we expect you to represent the school board as you're interacting with developers, business interests, and outside companies that are considering coming to our community.
Some of that ties right back to our goal of customer service, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, very simplistic.
Yeah, okay. And again, I'm not pointing the finger saying anyone's wrong. I'm just letting you know that's just a personal
No,
thing
it's
for me
good
as
you
we
brought it
talk
up.
about this, and we talk about, demonstration schools and all these other things. To me, it's part of the whole conversation. If we're gonna look at our 5-year capital plan, we're going to figure out how do we leverage all the revenue and resources that we have, and how do we bridge the gap that exists with our capacity needs. We have to stop and say, okay, what is our unique value proposition that we bring as an entity or as an interest to the other side of the equation to say, come here, and when you come, partner with us so that we can do it right out of the gate. So.
And I would agree with you, Tim, but I would also say on the opposite side that we have to be strong when it comes to the type of development that's going to have a negative impact on all the things we're sitting around here talking about at this table.
I agree.
We have to have a strong voice to say, no, we can't afford this. I won't use my phrase I was going to use. We can't afford certain things in Osceola County. There are some things we just can't do because we're not at that. Maybe Seminole County is. Go there. We can't afford that right now. We've got to lift up to be the county that we want to be in the future so that Bridge can be successful and so that this county long-term can be successful. So I agree with you 100%, but I'd also add that part too, that we need to be strong in what we say to the folks planning our future, to say this is how we do it right. And we know quality schools is what really drives home sales.
Well, keep in mind, concurrency is no longer a requirement.
Well, I understand that.
which it needed to be, and it was at one time.
Well, and just for your, I 100% agree. I really do. I think that's important. It goes to the comment that I made to some regarding the influx of students due to the hurricanes, is that my opinion, and I think it's the opinion of all of us, but my opinion was we will do what we're supposed to do. We'll be loving, kind, welcoming, and responsive. We'll provide the services we need, but not at the peril of the 65,000 students that we're already responsible for too. And it's the same thing with this. We want to welcome opportunity and partnership as we continue to grow, but not at the peril of our entire community or economic viability. So I liken them to me very much the same.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward, the net new classroom section on the bottom of page 16, that's just to look at, it has to balance with what's in the project tracking. That's why you'll see the zeros in there. We will have new classrooms, it just had to balance to what was in there. Relocatable student stations on page 17 is a look at the 5-year outlook based on our projections that we feel that we're going to need portables, either add portables or take portables away. We've projected that we'll take portables away from Denjon, all the comprehensive renovations, St. Cloud Middle and Michigan Avenue,
How many
once they're
portables do we have
completed.
now?
Sorry?
How many portables do we have now in the system? I don't need an exact, just roughly.
200 and
200, yeah,
Our
80.
high was 800, 900 at one
we used to
time?
have
We
900.
have about
Okay.
5,100 student
It's a total on
stations.
page 20.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it should be total up back there.
It's,
286.
well, it's just leased, you gotta remember, it's leased.
I just knew we were going.
Yeah. We're doing our best to get rid of them when we can, but with the growth, we're having to add.
Is it the 264 number?
Those are just leased.
I think it's
Those
the
don't count.
193 number is leased in the first column, that's
Mhm.
leased, but then we also own
The difference?
on top of that.
Is it the difference? We own the difference between 264 and 193?
No,
Or
I
is
think
it
the
two- what is it?
264 is what we're projecting 5 years
Oh,
out.
sorry.
This is all leased, no one.
Right, this is all leased.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the 193 is for this year, the
Is-
264 is
Right.
projected.
The 193 is leased.
Leased, and
How
then we
many
have-
do we own then?
Um,
Oh, boy. You have that? I have it, but I don't, yeah.
I guess I was curious what the total.
Ballpark?
Well, what the total
Total's 218
that we have.
total.
Oh, so we've only got 27 of our, that we own or something?
I might be wrong on that one. May have it reversed.
We'll follow up. We'll get that
Yeah, it's
information.
not, I'm just, gets back, really what I'm curious is how many we have in use, I
We
guess.
have 46 owned.
Okay.
46 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we do go out every year, schools that we feel that do not need them. We do a site visit. We see how they're using, if they're really needed. If their core facility can hold the students that we have projected, then we'll remove those portables if we feel not necessary. Now, this year's kind of different because of the influx of the children from Puerto Rico.
Are we
We're having-
ultimately gonna have to add some this year because of this, or are we gonna try, hopefully the classroom reduction request will be met?
We're exploring all other options before having to try to bring in portables. So many of our facilities are limited in their space. We'll be taking away playgrounds or other types of things if we have to start adding playground portables.
Exactly what they were just talking about, impacting the 62,000 kids that we have.
So we're exploring co-teaching wherever we can, if that makes more sense. Utilizing space, we did some space reconfiguration, as you know, this summer with some of our dollars. So we're trying everything that we can to avoid adding portables.
Okay.
The area, so I'm looking at this, and if I'm tracking correctly, Reedy Creek as examples, number 2 on the list, 234 student stations and relocatables going up to 324, going up to 378, and so
Correct.
on. And then I noticed Horizon is planned to go from 132 to 230. I saw another one that was like a double, or was it? It was Narcoossee Elementary from 90 to 180.
Yes.
With those, is the infrastructure already in place, or are we having to put in the additional underground and site prep, or are we just able to tap into where there used to be existing portables?
It's a site-by-site basis. So like at Narcoossee, if we go over to the middle school side, we're starting to have to add infrastructure. So if you went to a Flora Ridge, there would be no infrastructure on the ground, but you might go to a school. But we're also learning a lot of the old infrastructure had been removed over the years, so we are having to add new infrastructure.
And then you guys, when you're looking at adding all these, you're doing the cost-benefit analysis of all of that, of what we're putting in with underground and site prep, because it's what, $60,000 for each portable we put in with site prep or something?
Just over 50 now.
Okay,
But
yeah.
that also includes putting the FF&E inside of the portable.
Okay.
Classroom portables.
Well,
Right,
the
and that's what we wanna-
46, though, also, everything in here has nothing to do with ancillary.
So there's a-
So we have 46 owned at the schools, but we might have like the ancillary over at our place that are not in the counts that we're giving you.
We don't mind where you guys work, we just
Right.
care where the kids.
But it just- I'm just saying we could have more owned.
I'm
We're only
only
talking
talking
student
about
school.
classroom.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
Space and what office space.
yes.
Okay. We are working,
The
we are.
percentage stays relatively the same, it's
Yeah.
just the total.
Yeah.
And then we readdress this each year as we see more charter schools coming online. Then, of course, we'll back out portables based on new charter school openings. So this can significantly change from year to year.
And we're looking at Discovery this year due to the space reconfiguration we did last year. We're looking at Discovery to remove their portables because they have extra room now.
One other question. On the relocatables, I know the technology of these facilities has improved significantly over the last 25 years. We've been using them, not since we've been using them, but since I've been in them, I guess. Have we come across, or William Scotsman or Mobile Modular, do they have a newer product that isn't vastly more expensive, that feels and functions more like a permanent facility? Are we looking at those as well, or are we pretty locked into?
Mobile Modular has a side stackable that takes up less room on the site versus the old Type 4s that required the 20 or 30-foot setback. They're nice, but they're still portable. They have the air conditioning hung on one side, no windows on that one side, and of course the two sides. So they're a little bit nicer than the old Type 4s, but they're still a modular. And there are some companies that are looking at two-story modulars now. Of course, you have to do enough to wash the cost for the elevated walkway and the elevator.
And we do make them just like a regular classroom. Technology, teaching board, everything's in there for the students, so. Okay, we're gonna move ahead to the long-range planning section, and in this section, luckily, we're not closing any schools on page 20. We don't plan on closing any schools.
Really?
Yeah, I know, shocking as that is. On the next page, on page 21, is the 10-year look at what maintenance provides us as far as the facilities conditions assessment. They look out 10 years. Some things may be coming up 10 years out. A new chiller that went in this year might start needing some help, some repairs towards, I think life cycle is about 12 years, 13 for a chiller, so they might be needing some help towards the 7, 8, 9, 10-year range. They take that in consideration, and that goes into those numbers. 10-year capacity needs. This is everything that falls outside of our 5-year plan right now. Comprehensive renovations, additional high schools. Oops. Yep, they're on a 5-year plan. So as you can see there's additional wings, additional middle schools that we see based on our 10-year projections. On page 22, this is a breakdown of the COFD through 10 years, through 26, 27. And in 10 years, they're saying that our COFD totals will be 57,777.
So we're going to go 3,000 students in the next 10 years?
According to the DOE numbers, yes.
You've got to be a rocket scientist to come up with that calculation.
That's the DOE.
And it's updated every year.
You think it's been more like 3,500?
My number's between 32 and 3,300.
They consistently underestimate the number of students on a local and statewide basis, so that way they can underfund education.
Well, it's good that they got a 10-year number that's almost equal to our annual growth.
Yeah, actually, this year it will be equal, probably.
Probably a little less, actually.
Yeah, this year it'll be less, we'll have more than.
So our 10-year growth equals our 1-year.
Well, that way you don't have to fund anything. It saves you a lot of money.
Right, that's why they do it.
So,
Hey, we should start picking and choosing students. We're at capacity, sorry.
I say we grade legislators, they grade our schools.
We don't need to. Just so you know, one year, the superintendent of Orange County, Don Shaw, decided to send out a voicemail to the 20-something thousand employees, basically saying, tomorrow you will be voting, and here's what you need to know about who are the friends and who aren't. And he went through the list. You would have thought.
I bet the legislature liked that, didn't
We dropped a nuclear bomb. It was off the charts how thin-skinned they were.
Oh, Tim, when Tim was the school board,
Shay?
when Tim Shea was on the school board, we got elected the same time in 2002. We were, the two of us, we were gonna grade legislators and put it in the press. We had legislators calling us from all over the state when they heard about it. Scott Maxwell picked up the area. I'm telling you, the FSBA doesn't have the stones to do it. I think we should do it.
The only other thing that I would point out on a more serious note, just before you move on and ask any questions that you have, is if you notice on page 23 again, one of the challenges that we have with COFD is that the DOE estimates our utilization of our facility at like 81%, whereas we indicate we want to operate at 100% level of service. So that's the challenge. According to DOE, we don't need any additional student stations. 0.
In fact, they say we've overbuilt by 7,200 in their
And
eyes.
this is the issue that goes back to the
Where?
Michigan Avenue.
And we got 200 and some portables. I don't even understand how they can,
But I don't want to get you excited, but I just want to make sure you
School
understand that that's the challenge between the alignment of the Ed Plan survey, our approved budget, with local dollars going toward capital projects, and work plan.
it's not supposed to make sense? Well,
Just
I'm a
remember
very
that
logical person and I don't
When you're
function
looking,
well.
when you're looking at our capacity numbers, those include the portable student stations as well. So they don't differentiate permanent and relocatable. They include everything in our capacity
So
numbers.
that works against us as well.
Yeah. So that's basically the 10-year look. 20-year look is we just push some of the maintenance things out 20 years that they see possibly coming in the future that we may need. They give me those numbers, we put those in. 20 years is kind of the best. Yeah,
They're like Osceola County to be Jefferson County.
yeah. So basically,
I need to
that's
come sit
that's
down
a
with y'all
just
and have you really explain this to me.
it's the gist of the work plan. There any questions or further comments? We'll be happy to answer them.
Well done, sir. Board, there was a lot of information provided. I know that we had a moment, during the presentation, we were able to discuss certain points. Is there anything that anyone saved up that you want to bring up at this time that we can talk about?
I saved it up.
Are we going to go through this
I don't know.
document at all tonight?
If you want to, get to
Deborah wants me to present this.
Yeah, just close this part up then before that. All right, so you all satisfied, board?
Satisfied?
Well, I guess,
well,
Bring $100 million cash to be a little more satisfied.
That's what Frank will talk about.
oh, Frank's.
Okay, so wait, okay. All right, we can get started with that part then.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's my.
Frank, you have something to hand out?
Yes. If you will recall, when we resolved what I call the Michigan Avenue battle, my comment was, we won the battle, but we're still in the war. Well, I think it's fair to say the war has been declared. We received late yesterday a memo from Linda Champion, who's the finance person, deputy commissioner in Tallahassee, to all superintendents, finance officers, and facility directors, basically saying their interpretation of a new statute effective on July 1 of 2017 is that they effectively, I'll use her words, with the implementation of the statutory provision under which all new construction is subject to the statutory cost of construction limitations regardless of the source of funding. So this follows a conversation in which I alerted the superintendent that the
What's the statute?
Commissioner of Education was taking the position that all dollars were controlled by DOE. Now, if you recall, in my opinion, that furthers the plan of Corcoran to basically take away control at the local level from everybody. So Joy Frank called me. She's over in the Capitol right now. Suffice to say, this is a battle or a war at this point. The Superintendents Association and their team are meeting with the commissioner on this week. Deborah spoke with them. There are a number, let's assume we boil this down to a fight over interpretations, then we have to figure out what we do. But if you were to take their arguments unrebutted, along with COPD, along with everything else, we wouldn't be building anything right now. That's the extreme impact.
They don't run any schools.
No. And Dr. Pace and I won't, for public reasons, and strategy reasons, we'll talk with you individually, but I don't want to say, there are some things we can do to get things done, but the last thing I want to do is alert Tallahassee because right now, I don't consider anybody focused in Tallahassee on helping out school districts or local governments, other than it is clear that as it relates to Puerto Rico, there is a sensitivity to trying to unravel. So Dr. Pace is getting a whole list of that we can deal with. But the good news is this is a statewide issue. This is no longer just us sitting there alone. I called the lawyers today on the one lawsuit to see if they're adding this to a challenge or if it's been in there, but we've had it business-wise less than 8 hours, and we are working on it, and we'll keep you very closely advised. We have pushed back with them, and I want to compliment Rhonda and Mark and everybody. We worked the last couple of days with Dr. Pace and everyone on a letter that I think is as good as it could have been written to explain to them why we think they're wrong on certain issues as it relates to our being able to build. That said, I spoke with Dr. Pace and have asked someone in Tallahassee if they would go over to DOE and try and intervene before any opinion gets written back so that hopefully the opinion comes back properly. But at this point, my opinion, we're going to have to lift the lid off this charade, and I call it a charade, all right, because Republicans preach local control. We've all heard that over and over again. Well, the last thing we've seen is a commitment to local control in Tallahassee.
Where's Senator Montford on this?
All right, Montford is helping us. He's over involved. He's going to the meeting, all right, so he understands it totally, but this has serious implications to us. So to go back to your thing, Tim, about alternative approaches, if you actually read this language literally, we may get to the point where we simply say, we got to have people build schools and we're going to lease them. We're not going to build them because the law doesn't talk about leasing.
Can you use your sales tax money to pay lease payments? If it's replacing the
You are opening the door to all the questions we got to answer at this point, and I got to tell you.
I say we ignore this, we need to do on this.
Well, you can't ignore it right now because they have the ability to turn and say, okay, we think you wasted the dollars. You're not getting them in your next tax allocation. You can't. You've got to figure out how to move Tallahassee. You can't fight them. I'm telling you that they have the ammunition to fight back and block. And candidly, I don't see the leadership at DOE. You and I've talked about it. I'll say it publicly. Designed to help districts. And it used to be the days when they were there to help. And I personally believe an elected commissioner of education at least would give a voice. But I called today, just so you know, and asked the CRC, is there a deadline? I think I was right, our deadline for proposing amendments. So they're looking right now, the staff at the Constitutional Revision Commission, on any proposal that I could amend onto it, blocking the state from having any law that in any way impairs the use of a local government or school board's use of locally raised dollars. All right, but this thing is a moving target. Right now, I'm asking you not to do anything other than if you talk to your local legislators, say this is wrong. But we're working on it late last night, around the clock, trying to get through.
Well, where does this put us on how we move forward? You know, as we wrangle, which I agree that we should do, we put our own community and our own kids in peril. I mean, literally. We want to rebuild a school that doesn't have enough student stations for the students that it services. And, that, you know, we can talk about how dumb that is till we're blue in the face, but what's the reality? How do we move forward? What are your plans? What is your plan?
as of right now, that is what we're trying to figure out.
So we don't,
Is the
we're
best-
still just in limbo.
We just
on-
this just got dumped in our lap, all right, the extent of this.
Spot survey we addressed.
The spot survey we worked through,
The spot survey, what we did is we took all of the approved actual development turning dirt, so not what's coming and hasn't turned dirt, who's really turning dirt. And we determined how many units that was, and then we did our students' generation rate. So just in the Michigan Avenue attendance on Boundary, that's 127 new kids within the next 24 months. So we went, we wanted to go back and say, well, there's 127 not in your COFD because your COFD doesn't include new residential development. So in case they said, well, just redistrict them. So I went a step further and I looked at Hickory Tree, Lakeview, and Narcisse Elementary because they're the three adjacent.
All those schools have like 20% room, right? Oh, I know.
So
that's not an answer to redistricting.
Yeah.
we ended up getting the number up to supporting, actually what we did is, then we took all the capacity at the 4 schools combined. We looked 5 years out at their approved COFD, and we subtracted the number and we added in the residential development, and we would be 220 seats short at the 4 schools combined. So we kind of went at it because we're under the impression they'll accept that as a rebuttal to their denial. So that letter just went up yesterday. So we are looking for a somewhat favorable response to at least be able to move forward with Michigan Avenue at the full recommended size.
But that doesn't clear up STEM or potential other projects. So we just need a little time to strategize and figure out the different angles. We've already talked through an approach on STEM if we had to go that way in working with the county, but at the end of the day, this is a pretty dramatic grab.
I have asked the team to continue moving forward with the work that we're doing on Michigan Avenue. Those plans are at 100%. However, we have explored some options of things that you could do within the plan. For example, not build out a part of the building or something like that, build the shell but not build out all of it on a temporary basis. But that would be a last resort type thing. Meanwhile, we're working through the channels and doing everything that we can to start approval. And if we can get approval for the Michigan Avenue spot survey with the additional information that Rhonda prepared and submitted yesterday, then we will look at what we need to do district-wide in terms of adjusting our COFD. I mean, certainly, as you all know, we've adjusted 1,248 students that we didn't expect beyond our projection. And so there's more growth anticipated even with the moratorium in
Call it
place.
the Puerto Rican wing.
So
Hurricane Maria Annex.
we're, certainly going to continue to advocate. In the meantime, we're moving forward.
Built into the statutes is a whole process for penalizing you for violating it.
But there's also built into the statute a process for appealing to the state board if we're denied by the Commissioner of Education.
And we are totally prepared to go that route. And I believe have
Board in
people,
concert with the Commissioner?
I think the state board is going to be far more receptive to our argument than the bureaucrats right now.
What, is there a timetable?
Like, if we don't have this wrapped up by next week, my opinion is we need to ask for a meeting with the state board and appeal it. Because if we don't get it resolved by next week, we're not getting it resolved in our favor. Because after that meeting, we're going to know, and I think there needs to be a political discussion with some people too. But it's got to move in sequence to get out there. And I got to tell you, if we resolve it, my great concern is they just figure another
Is the
fence to
governor
throw.
aware of this and is he in support of it?
The governor, when I first went to him, I'm going to say this publicly, on the first issue with Michigan Avenue, and he said, his reaction was, why would DOE be looking over what a local district wants to build? That was his first business approach. He goes, so he literally got his staff person and said, help them out. Well, a staff person called me back and said, we can't help you because DOE's thrown this law in front of us. So you have a legislature that's passed laws which are counter to good business practice, counter to good growth practice. It
Are
is
you
counter.
referring to a law that came out like about midnight where nobody could review it before they voted on it?
July
And-
1st,
and-
2017.
Yeah, and what they
This
do.
is the train
Yes.
bill.
This rule here?
Yes.
It's a train bill.
Yes.
The language in 7069 specified that all dollars had to be billed at the cost per student station, the standard that DOE set. It used to, all, impact fee dollars, sales tax dollars, all. But that's as far as that language goes, from what Frank has read, from what Joy Frank with FADS has read. It doesn't go beyond. But they're taking that same application of all dollars have to be billed to that cost per student station to all dollars have to comply with anything else, anywhere else in the statute about DOE control.
What if you can build it for less than what they suggested?
It was always our intention to come in at that number.
Right.
Absolutely, yes.
There's multiple
will.
prongs to this. One is, you can't spend more than this. Okay, we'll live with that. Then the next one is, well, we don't approve you building it, because when we look at all your numbers, just rezone and you have all the room in the world down there, right?
So that's how they get us.
And they do it over and over again. It's got worse of an impact on us than some other places, just because you can't believe the big ones can manipulate and do an awful lot of stuff when they got a lot of money to play around with.
Sure. What is the legal steps here? I mean, if you were to present, I think if you were to present this to a judge, surely they could, well, they're saying you're at 80% and you're actually demonstrating you're not. I mean, don't you think a reasonable person would?
Yes, except my only reason I want to try and get it done without that
Well, I understand.
is when
Me
you
too.
go that route, you get tied up in the court system.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't get to keep moving forward.
Correct.
And the kids get hurt. So this may bring about some new approaches that, you know, I talked to Doc, I mean, sometimes you lease pay places. Sometimes you do this, sometimes you do that. There's a potential, you know, could we get an emergency injunction and say they have no right, et cetera? The only good thing right now is we're all lumped in this. We're just, I can't speak for all the other districts, but we're at a point where we want to move, and we're going to keep moving, but we got to see what they say at the meeting. And the other thing is, they've got to know, what I'm hoping is they don't just default to, well, we're bound by the law, and that's our,
The answer to that, then, the court gets to interpret the law.
But at that time, so we can't build Michigan Avenue for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Well, we have a backup plan. We can not renovate Building 3, the existing wing that we have to keep that wouldn't Castaldi out, and that's about 200 student stations. So you subtract that out, and then you shell out 3 classrooms. It could get us to the number that they've identified to us. There are backup plans. That's not the preferred. Rhonda drafted an excellent letter. It was sent out yesterday, countering the preliminary review comments from the spot survey. We provided some very compelling information why DOE should sway from their current position. So we're going to wait and hear back from that, and hopefully it will be good. But we are continuing to move forward with
Wish I
Michigan
could
Ave.
share your optimism based on the way this has been going.
Board, any other further discussion? All right, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn this workshop. 10-minute break before we reconvene for the redistricting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank
Here on the
you.
redistricting?
We are just going to stay down here,
We'll
right?
stay down here?
Isn't that was that what we said? I think
Well,
we've got
I
a place
thought
for public comment
we
right over
did,
here.
okay, but that,
I mean, Kelvin, if you want to do something different, we can.
no, I didn't know, yeah, we could use that.